All right, we are live. It is Thursday, September 23rd. This is our weekly developer check-in on active issues going on for Backdrop Core and related projects. Before we get into today's agenda, I'd like to go around and do some quick introductions so if everyone can share what your name is, where you're from, and if there's anything exciting that's not currently on the agenda you want to share with us, 30 seconds or less, we can go ahead and do it now. I'll go first. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California. I'm very excited about the new theoretical homepage initiative we just talked about in the design meetings. If you're curious about that, go back and watch that. And then I will turn it over to Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim, St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And just a lot of stuff going on. We had a good design meeting. I encourage people to go check that out and give us their opinion on the homepage. Greg.
So hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece, and yeah, I'm looking for a bit of coordination on what to work on for the next release. So Robert, did you go yet?
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And I'll pass it to Justin.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. And I'll pass it to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph Latt from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a backend developer. And Nate.
I think I'm the last one. And I'm Nate Lampton from Oakland, California. Quick sketch on the internet. And I don't have anything else. So back to you, Jen. Oh, mute.
Muted. Just a quick update. There's one new contributed module out this week, the CDN module. This was something that I ported a long time ago and didn't get a chance to use. And then some fantastic person showed up and said, this is working great. Why doesn't it have a release? And I was like, oh, I didn't know if it was working or not. So that was really exciting for me. So I just want to share that. Let's see. I think that's it. There's no current applications or anything else we need to talk about. So let's turn it over to, I don't know, Nate, you want to talk about the forum posts?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'm going to do something unusual. We don't normally screen share, but I'm going to screen share today to pull up some of these items. So, okay, so on the agenda today, we've got 3 items that have been raised either before the meeting or in the forum post. And so the first one is this request. Indigo Zal made 2 requests. One of them was this issue: provide a clean method to suppress layout. And this is spun off of something from references dialog. Contrib module that lets you create node references within a modal dialog. And we have a pull request here by Gregory that creates this new function that suppresses layouts, and then when inside of the layout route handler function, it like checks that function if the layout should be used. So it's really simple implementation. My thinking on this is that this is like a really good idea to include. We probably need test coverage, like as always, on new things. But one thing that gives me pause about all of this is that references dialog is the module that needs it. But here we go. Olaf commented here that there's this one line here that makes it all unnecessary. But I was looking at this module, and I really think that like this module probably can solve the problem already. When it's doing its AJAX request, it's just using a normal post callback. And if it were submitting an AJAX callback that either was a backdrop AJAX callback or just it specified a different accept header, then it would already bypass the layout handling in the first place. So so there's a way to like solve this problem already for references dialog. and I'm kind of worried that introducing a layout suppress thing like this will just allow people to do things kind of incorrectly a different way. That's what I'm a little worried about. So yeah, I don't know. There's more thinking to be done here, but I still don't see any problem with the way that this is providing the option. Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Greg, you've been involved in this. Olaf too.
Yeah, but it's been a couple of years since, so I have to check again. Mostly, I think I was just trying to be helpful. So the initial pull request was by GitHub, and then that person was not available. So I mainly just rebased or fixed the pull request, and I'll do that again just to update it. But yeah, I don't have any personal use for it. If you think that it's a way that allows people to shoot themselves on the foot, then yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of things to do
Yes.
things wrong, in Backdrop, and maybe that's fine. That if they get it working, then there you go. It's just that I see even from like the code in references dialog. Where is it? These like to do. What was that? Okay, hang on. If I just reload this, here we go. So you can see here that this is what happens when you're trying to do it wrong. It's like I tried doing it wrong this way, and then that stopped working, and then I tried doing it wrong this way, and there's another wrong way to do it here, and so it's just like it's just like every way that you could possibly have done this wrong, where we're changing the global server variables to change the way the request was, how the request is identified, when in truth, what it really should be doing is just when the request is made, it just should have set those headers in the first place. Like that would have solved the problem. If the headers would have been passed here instead, but
yeah, maybe that's an argument then for that function to exist in core, so that people don't attempt to be doing things the wrong way and just use that.
But we'd just be giving them another wrong way to do it. It's just in core now.
Yeah, it would still be wrong, but it would be at least less wrong. It wouldn't break, so I don't know. It's
Slightly less wrong.
Yeah.
I also looked at this issue, I think when it originally came around, and I was like, it just seems to me like this is something that will happen when people come to Backdrop and don't know layouts yet. And they're going to be like, oh, how do I turn this off? And you're like, well, you don't, it's not like panels where it, the rest of your page will work without it. This is something you actually need in almost all instances. And once you get to know how Backdrop works, then you probably won't want to turn it off anymore. So, there are valid use cases for not having it, but so far it looks like we've provided the solutions for those. So yeah, I would be curious to know if there are other use cases people are working with that they can't get it working with, and rather than doing it now where it looks like we think there aren't any.
Yeah, so I'm on the fence about that one, because it's like, yes, it seems like a pretty reasonable idea, a pretty reasonable suggestion. Like Indigo Zell points out, it would be nice to have some easy way of doing that. I also kind of wonder, and maybe I'll toss this to Robert, if the new hooks that we provided in 120, would they help at all with this problem of being able to say, hey, a request is coming in, don't put a layout on it?
That feels like it's at a level above where the hooks come in. It's when you were flipping through the code, it looked like it it replaced it in the code of the PR. It got in, yeah.
Oh yeah, here it is. It's in layout route handler. So I know that's where some of our code changed in 120 in layout route handler. Or
yeah. So I think that if you swap out, if you replace the layout route handler, then you'll never get to our hook.
Yeah, this is above. This is like the very first lines actually in layout route handler, and I think our I'm not quite sure where they happen, but they're somewhere. It's all related down in here somewhere. Maybe it's in layout, get layout by path, that where
Yes.
the hooks happen. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's right afterwards. Yeah, that's
Okay.
funny. Okay, well, never mind then. Anyway, I think for now I'll just
Yeah, it's
ponder
not
that one
much
a little bit
trouble.
more.
It's not much trouble for me to update it, rebase it at least so that it's with the fresh code because it's been a couple of years, and then we can make a decision eventually. But if there's at least 2 people now that think that it's useful, we should not dismiss it.
Cool. Okay.
Is Olaf still here? No.
Yeah, stop the
No,
share
he-
so we can see faces. There we
He
go.
left.
Oh, okay. But Caden
just
joined. Hi, Caden.
Whoa.
I just saw that he had a use case here, and I was wondering what it was.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
All right. Let's see. We usually do introductions at the beginning of the meeting. Caden, if you want to give an introduction, you can do so now, or if not, that's fine too.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm Caden. I'm calling in from Eugene, Oregon. And I've been a full stack developer for a long time, but about 5 years ago, I pivoted to be in cybersecurity. So I've done less and less web dev, more and more cybersecurity stuff here over the last few years. And I'm just observing today, just here to check out the dev meetings, how they work and what they're about.
Great. Well, thank you and welcome. Caden, Greg, Jen, and I had a meeting earlier this week, just getting acquainted. So welcome to the weekly call, though. Okay, so we'll keep going here. So the next issue that we have brought up from the forum post is issue 5245, using GitHub Actions for PHP CS checks. I'll share my screen again because some of these things are just really great visuals. Indigo Zella, again, has been working on this. Greg, I see you're in here as well. In this pull request, you can actually see Indigo Zella put some samples. Where? Here it is. Put some samples, like a test PHP file in here to see what kind of result would happen with the linter. And this does exactly what we want. We've always described our like ideal, like if only we could get X, and now it's a piece of cake that you can just turn on this GitHub action, it runs PHPCS, it deals with all of the authentication, the setting up the tokens. You don't have to do any of that anymore when you're using GitHub Actions. And it per line makes comments saying, hey, this line has a coding style problem. Inline comments must start with a capital letter. Inline comments must end in a period, you know, like it's exactly what we're wanting as far as like automating the process of like making sure that our coding style is enforced. So this is super great. I'm very excited about this possibility. But the concern Greg raised here is completely accurate, saying that we're pulling from like in order for PHPCS to run, we need to provide it a set of XML files that provide the coding standards that it should follow. And right now those coding standards exist in the coder project in Contrib. And the way that we're loading coder module into this action right now is using Composer. And Composer is pulling from a fork of coder that Jeff Serendipity had made quite some time ago. So just generally the way that we're getting the coding standards is just a little bit weird. We have this like weird, we have a Composer file that gets thrown in MISC, and then at the beginning of the action, we copy the Composer file to the root and then use Composer to get coder. And that this whole thing is just a little bit of a weird operation. So my suggestion here is that maybe we sidestep the question about Composer and just like curl the latest tarball release and then use the cache action provided by GitHub to cache the installation of coder module so that we don't have to download it every single pull request. I mean, we
And
could even download it every single pull request. if we
coder
wanted to,
module,
make it
like
more
from
efficient.
Drupal, or coder module from Backdrop Contrib, or the
Backdrop
coder
Contrib.
Yeah, from
fork
Backdrop
of
Contrib.
the Drupal module that Jeff was using?
Well, I guess that's another question, Jen, is that
Yeah.
I'm not actually really sure where the latest, like I know a lot of people, several people have taken a stab at like getting the coding standards updated, and I don't
Yeah.
know where the latest coding standards are.
So I think that what Jeff has is not a module. It's just a fork of Drupal's Composer collection of standards. And what we have in Backdrop Contrib are the modules, but no coding standards. Like that, they have the old Drupal coding standards that work with the previous version of PHP-CS. And I don't think we have I don't think we have a up-to-date version of what we need. And this might be as simple as like putting a coder project into Backdrop that is what we need.
Just what we need. Yeah.
But there is going to be some confusion for people coming from Drupal looking for the coder module, finding a project called Coder and having it only be coding standards and not a module. So yeah, I was one of the people that tried to do this. I tried to get coding standards running on one of my own Contrib projects and ran into this immediately and was like, I don't understand.
Does it make sense for that coder then to be living under the main Backdrop group in
Backdrop
GitHub
ops.
instead of serendipity? That's all I'm saying. That so Jeff has sort of like not been active for a year now or more. That was basically just move the repo and the packages thing if we decide to go down the Composer thing, and move it under the Backdrop group. We currently have Backdrop, the main repo there, and the issues. Maybe Coder should go there if not Contrib.
Yeah, I mean, I
And,
feel
I
like
mean, sorry.
that.
You go ahead.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions we need to ask. I mean, that starts with the assumption that we actually want to use Composer. And if we don't want to use Composer, I think there's a whole nother question of like, where do we want our coding standards to live? And maybe the coding standards should live in core and not in something to do with Composer, because that way anyone that's running Backdrop could use them for something else. I don't know. There's just a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, Composer or not is one question, but where we host it is a question in both scenarios. Like if we use Composer or not, it still has to point at a GitHub repository somewhere.
Unless it's in
And so-
core.
Oh, yeah, I guess there is that.
Another question. Right.
So there's a GitHub repository called Contrib that holds the recommended README file, which sort of feels similar to a standard. Maybe that's a place where the coder standards could also live. It's not something that's part of the core distribution, but it's used for core.
I didn't follow that, Robert. Can you repeat it?
Oh, yeah, sorry. There's a repository called Contrib that
Under Backdrop ops.
under
Or
Backdrop ops
applications. Yeah.
that hosts the recommended README file. I don't remember what else is there. Just
Yeah,
remember-
license file and some instructions. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's that or something like it is the place to put files that are not part of a distribution, but are neat, and not part of Borg, but are needed for distribution. I mean, are needed for processing like this. Maybe.
I haven't thought of what Jen thought about. So we are going to be using it in every pull request. So it does make sense to be part of core, and then maybe the Contrib module can take advantage of it, because that's what we are going to be using across core and Contrib, right? So these are the coding standards. So maybe a good way is to be enforcing them via I don't know, core. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have only a slight preference for moving it outside of core because it alleviates some of the maintenance by the core team, that coding standards, like, they're not affecting the product in any way whatsoever. You know, when people download Backdrop, they don't need the coding standards,
Fair
first
enough.
of all. And the coding standards also, if they were separate, then a separate maintainer could review and update and keep the coding standards up to date instead of it being core issues.
Yeah, and then if we need to update a coding standard mid cycle, which version would we pull? Because if it was in Contrib, we could get a new release which includes the latest standard and the fixes, whereas in Core we'd have to wait until the next official release of Core. Yeah, I think
Okay, yeah, well, I think that if a core maintainer says, I don't want it in core, that's a good enough reason. And my second preference then would be to have it as a contrib project. And then the only question next is how to deal with namespacing and which version do we want?
so.
Because
Currently, if you look at the contrib coder, is a placeholder which basically says what you need is coder update and coded review. We could just reuse it and say, you know, what it currently holds is the coding standards for core and contrib, and then point people to the other two modules.
yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
So then it like mirrors, it wouldn't be a module though, right?
No, it would be just the things
Just
that we
the standards.
Just the definitions. Yeah, the definitions
Yeah.
of the standards that we need in order for the linter to run.
I think that makes sense because that sort of models what happened in Drupal, where they threw away the modules and had only the standards. And so we're like, okay, well, we're going to switch to standards too, but rather than throwing away the modules, we're just going to make separate projects for them. So I think that having coder match for Drupal as for Backdrop is similar. And then, you know, we could even, if we, you know, wanted to include the composer stuff in the contrib project, we could. That doesn't mean we need to use it for our core purposes too, but it would leave more flexibility for other people. So if that's the case, then probably what we should do is ask Jeff if he can move that project into the contrib space. If not, we could fork it and put it there.
Yeah, we could. Yeah,
but-
I was gonna say we could always just check out
Yeah,
the repository.
I would prefer to
and push it
ask
back up.
him first because he's
Yes.
put all the work into it, and I would love to have his blessing on that.
So he separately did a bunch of work to upgrade the coding standards. Is that right? Or
Yeah, so it's not just the coding standards, it's like making them compatible with the more modern version of PHP CS.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it clearly works with Indigo Zealous pull request, which is great, you know, but I'm not sure if they're still like, if that only kind of works, you know, we haven't
Yeah.
really
The thing
comprehensively tested it.
the thing that triggered this whole set of where are we pulling this from is because Indigo Zella made the comment there about the quote, which is being decoded in the message. I'm not sure if you noticed it, Nate, where
Yeah.
it said,
Yeah, here, I'll show
Yeah.
it again.
and I thought that it was coming from coder. So I started looking like, where is that coming from? Can we fix it? Maybe it's just, you know, a matter of putting it outside the comment or whatever. But even if we locate where that is, then we wouldn't have much like access to it if we don't have access to the repo. So
yeah, and Joseph's here now too, and I know he did a lot of work on this also. So I don't know how long you've been here, Joseph, if you heard the beginning of this conversation.
I've been here the whole time.
Okay, sorry, I missed you earlier with the screen share. I didn't see you until recently.
I was actually in during the design meeting too. I just didn't say much. Anyway, I have not looked at this in a very long time, so I do not remember what the status is on updating the coding standards.
Okay, well, it sounds like our next step, it seems like, is getting that repository, Jeff's repository, reviewing it to see if it's actually different, you know, to see if there's stuff that needs to be preserved there. We're assuming that he's updated PHPCS coding standards to be the new version, and then move it to somewhere. And is the somewhere, is that I didn't quite catch where the somewhere was. Is it backdrop contrib? Is it a separate project?
Yes.
I think contrib makes the most sense because that's where everyone would probably go to look for it.
Yeah, and also we could give access to core maintainers for the maintainers, and on top of that, we're gonna have the people from the bug squad, just looking after it. So
Okay. What should the name of it be? Do we
Coder.
want to get that far?
Coder.
Coder?
Yeah.
That's just the standards?
That way it'll match what Drupal's doing with the Coder project.
Oh, that's what Drupal does? Oh,
Yeah.
crazy. Oh, I can see why you're like, this is confusing, because that is confusing.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's oh well.
Or we can change it. But
We could call
I
it
don't-
Coder PHPCS or something, and I don't know,
yeah, or just coding standards or whatever.
Coder standards.
Well, I know
Coding,
you want to
yeah, whatever.
namespace it under Coder, but I don't know, coding standards. I don't know.
Coder standards is like, it's clever.
Code-
Coder standards, because it's like coding, but never mind. It's not that good idea. I'm not gonna fight Barb for this.
Okay, well, exactly what it is called will probably be determined by whoever does the work. As, is often the case, right?
And Jen now goes away, just goes away to do the work. So-
Okay, okay, next thing I want to do is talk about telemetry a little bit. And before we get into the actual discussion, I wanted to pull up this page, which is the telemetry page on backdropcms.org. So if you're on backdropcms.org and you go to the download page, there's a telemetry tab here now. And we have 30, we should put a number up here, how many sites are counted total, probably, because right now you kind of have to just add them all up. But 37 sites have started reporting their data, and we're starting to aggregate it on backdropcms.org, which is super cool. Obviously, this page doesn't have any styling. It would be better if it was like, graphs and all of these things, but it's still like super exciting that these numbers are starting to come in. Yeah, so that's very cool. Very exciting to have these kinds of statistics available.
Just a moment ago, these numbers were like, they had like in the operating system, there was a single count of Darwin, like a Mac operating system, and the count for Linux was 32. So I don't know, things are changing.
Yeah, what I think it is I think that we have the pruning happening too frequently of the data. And so sites need to check in. Sites check in once per day, but I think the pruning of data is happening more frequently than that. So there's actually these numbers, like they drop quicker than they should,
Yeah.
I think. But that's server side, like the preservation of data just could be improved a little bit. We're not maintaining historical data right now to see how things change over time. It's just this is the current state of things.
Can I ask that 37 or 35 sites actually feels a little high, given that we haven't asked anybody to do this yet? If I've turned it on a few of my sites, so that might be partly me. Have other people been turning this on? I mean, does it make sense?
I think it has to. I mean, look at the way that these things are distributed. Unless people are putting in a lot of effort to spin up different environments, because look at there's 29 MySQL 5.5 sites out there, but there's not 29 nearly like
I think-
PHP versions that are out there. They're all different.
I think that's MariaDB. If it's 5, if it starts with a 5, it's MariaDB.
Oh, I thought
Could
it
be
was
the
if it
opposite.
starts
I think
with a
it's the
10,
opposite.
Then it's MariaDB. Yeah.
I think they jumped from 5 to 10.
Ah, well, okay. Well, anyway, like the way the numbers are panning out, it's clearly not just like one server that's hosting like 20 sites. So
I know I've enabled telemetry on every site I've updated to 20, and it's been on a variety of miscellaneous servers. So I don't even know what versions they're all running on. It'll be curious to see how that pans out.
Okay, so is that, well, okay, that's fine. The next question I'm having is should we be encouraged, are we ready to encourage other sites to do this? Should we like do a dashboard notification or a blog post, or is this too early?
yeah, I think we totally should.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, and there's no reason not to ask people to send us this data. I mean, I think we can always add more data in the future and that'll be even better, but we could do another post when every time we do that, that's like, hey, we're now collecting whatever. You want to share this with us?
Right.
So
Are you able to really quickly show us a site and what information we're displaying to end users on their site about what's being collected? I haven't looked at that yet. But if you can't, that's fine.
I can spin up a demo site and while
Oh,
you
yeah.
go ahead and then in the
Alright.
meantime,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I'll
sounds
see my
good.
screen.
the doc site is doing it. We could just log in there and try that.
Looks like I might have logged in. So
What's the limit?
telemetry,
Okay,
here we go.
nice. Okay,
So
perfect.
here's the thing how I think that page can be improved is provide a link depending on the module that provides it to take you to that telemetry with the rest of the data. Here's the stats that we have so far or something. Like make one of those things a link to the telemetry module.
Oh yeah, like actually posting to, yeah. Yeah, we could link.
Yes, that exactly.
The-
because
the
it's
module
because it's
name
gonna,
here.
yeah, in theory it's gonna be any module. So
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. At one point I had separated out package from module, but now this is only showing module. Yeah, but that's a great idea. We can do the link and refactor that all together. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
So
So just to clarify, I can go ahead and tweet and notify dashboards about enabling this module.
Yep.
Good,
and
okay.
I do think it would be great before we cause like some panic or something like that, if we had a blog post explaining like
Good,
the details. But yes, I think we're ready to start press about this. That would be great.
Okay, yeah, I like the idea of having a blog post first and having everything else linked to that blog post. Okay.
Okay, let's see. So the follow-up issues that we have on telemetry, one of the items that we wanted to discuss that has been contentious is issue 3168. So this issue is about update module. So there's now two mechanisms that report data back to backdropcms.org. Update module has been doing this forever because it collects usage statistics, how many times a module has been installed and what versions there are. Telemetry is now a second way that we're collecting data that is about the configuration of the site rather than just what projects people have installed. This issue is about making it so that update module can opt out of being tracked. Like if their data from the site won't be tracked on backdropcms.org, but the site can still check for updates. Because right now, if you check for updates, you get tracked. And
Just to be clear, that does not prevent the sending of information from your site. It won't decrease network traffic. All it does is make it so that we don't count the fact that somebody requests that data.
Yep. And so where this shows up is project usage backdrop. These numbers. This is update module reporting usage. And if you check for updates, your site gets counted in this total. I'm not even sure where I want to go from there. Maybe I'll turn it over to Greg or Jen to talk more about this, because it's kind of gotten into a little bit of a pickle where we're not, we've kind of chosen opposing sides here. So, like the
Greg
way that we
versus
should
Jen.
proceed.
yeah. So what I think is
I can just state my case really quickly then, and then I think Greg, your side is probably longer. Basically, this is a feature that nobody asked for, and it's going to hurt Backdrop because that usage statistic is already something that people use to figure out if Backdrop is a viable option for them. And so if we all of a sudden give people an option to opt out of something that they never cared about before now, people will start using it, and that'll make our numbers go down even more. And we already made a handful of changes to project module that make our numbers smaller than Drupal's, things like making sure our tests don't count and making sure multiple copies of the same site don't count. And so we're already a little bit apples to oranges. And if you show someone's backdrop numbers and they are used to seeing Drupal, so they're like, oh gosh, that doesn't look like it's working at all. And you're like, it's not the same count. And now we're basically going to be making that worse. So I'm really concerned about giving people this option. There was previously a issue where there were a couple of people in the Drupal community who expressed concern about their site having information about it being reported and stored. And we have fixed that. So now all of the data that's being stored about any website is completely anonymous. And so there shouldn't be any issue anymore. Like, we solved the concern that was never solved in Drupal by already making sure that we're not tracking anything dangerous. And so now this is like a question of, do we want to give people this option because it feels like the right thing to do? So that's kind of, and there, because this is backdrop, there are a lot of people who are like, we should always just do the right thing, which I love you, Greg. I appreciate that perspective. But I'm not sure in this case that the line there about right and wrong is so clear. Like, I feel like the wrong thing was tracking that information before, and we fixed that. And now it's like, Nate also had some thoughts about theoretical use cases that people could come up with where they didn't want the numbers counted, but still wanted usage. And then Joseph mentioned a real world use case where he didn't want usage tracking, but did want the numbers counted. And so we've got these scenarios where it could be useful to handle this differently. But because all of those scenarios are a little bit different, I feel pretty strongly that all of those solutions can be achieved in Contrib, and we don't need to put this in core. That's my thought.
To clarify on that, what I didn't want was the update modules user interface.
Yeah. Okay. So if Nate, you could share the screen and show that issue again. There's a comment from you 14 days ago, which you provided 3 screenshots from the pull request, and then comparing the installer before and after. So if you scroll a bit up, it's the first comment that you will find from you.
Nate, if
So
you're
that's so yeah. So from the whole pull request, I think that this issue says separate checking for updates from collecting anonymous data. So basically, that checkbox that Nate has added there, that's the one thing, right? So that's what we're talking about. Now, Nate also changed things in the installer, and I think we shouldn't do that as part of this, or we could. But if we did, I would prefer that we remove the update notifications thing entirely. We make the update module be on by default always. And if people want to change whether they receive notifications, because remember how we over the course of time we changed this checkbox so to not confuse people with the actual admin email and where the emails are being sent from. So we have a place where people can configure that. So I think that we should ditch the entire field set there and make it so that people that want to disable email notifications, just after the installation, they just go in the interface there and they just tick or untick things.
Yeah, and one thing that kind of sidesteps this, I know that asking people if they want to receive email is definitely a thing that by habit we feel like we need to do everywhere. But this is not signing up for a mailing list. This is not sending your email to somewhere else. It's literally having your site that you just set up email the email address that you just entered. So it's like you're already the recipient, but you're also the administrator of the mailing list. So it's that privacy concerns and all that stuff is probably not something that we need to be worried about.
Exactly. So I was thinking that this whole thing can go away, but where we disagree now with Jen is that should we add that other checkbox in the settings to allow people to opt out or not? I'm saying yes.
I'm objecting on a much higher level than that. I'm saying this feature doesn't need to exist at all.
Yes.
Let alone are we going to add it and put it somewhere else?
Oh, we should close this issue.
Yeah.
We should close this issue and pull request. Yes. Okay. And the other thing is the counter argument when it comes to metrics being lower is that, and I understand that we are going to have the project stats be less, but if people enable telemetry, we said that we will be counting the core modules that are enabled. And if you count the system module, then you get an actual count of those that enable telemetry. Right?
You're
then you will
assuming
say
someone will want to
disable
send you their telemetry data and not send you their module data?
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, so Nate's checkbox put those both things together.
No, I would want that to be separate than telemetry. So telemetry, I would prefer it if it was like, I don't know, a dashboard, basically a dashboard block that says, thank you for having a telemetry. If you want to disable it, disable the module.
Yeah, I think we should do that anyway.
Yes, which is a separate issue. And as I said in the last comment in that thread where you are, Nate, this is how I summarized it. So these are the three things that I see as actioning. There's 3 bullet points there. So decoupling the sending of project stats and allowing people to, update, that should be this issue. Then removing the entire thing from the installer and having everything be enabled by default can either be done as part of this pull request, but it could be separate, like a subtask of the older issue that we have, and then a separate issue for the telemetry thing. So I agree with Jen that telemetry and the usage stats from projects should be separate things, not a single checkbox doing everything.
I still don't think so Nate had a pretty good point. I don't remember where he said this, that people aren't going to understand the difference between sending usage statistics and sending telemetry data. That's something that's sort of a backdrop internal thing that just happens to be how technically the systems work. But for most people, it's am I sending data or not? And they're probably going to want to either send data or not send data and not think about which
kind of data
they're
it is.
sending. Kind of.
Right.
What if we had a single box that was provided by the system module, block, sorry, or a message? It could be a message, it could be a status page entry that was saying, you're sending 2 types of information. You can disable telemetry by disabling the module, and you can disable the statistics by checking this box.
I still don't think there's anyone who wants that box.
Okay.
And there are a handful of Drupal modules too that
There's an easy way to find out because we have telemetry. See the irony there? So if you add the checkbox, you will find out how many people actually want it because they're going to start using it.
No, yeah, but can I jump in? Because I reject that argument. A lot of people are going to disable that, not because they want to, but because they just think that any collection of data is bad. And if you give them an option, they're going to turn it off. And it's not because they care. And if you sat down and explained it to them, they might leave it on. So I don't think it's that simple, that people are turning this off because they really have thought through the issue and have an opinion. And I think that's Jen's concern, is that you give them the option, they're just going to take it. And that doesn't mean that they care about it.
Yeah, I understand. I don't disagree. And I understand
Right.
Jen's point. It's just that I disagree that we shouldn't do it because of that. Because I want us to do the ethical thing.
Why don't we create a contrib module that does that? And then anyone who actually cares can install the module and they can turn off the thing.
Okay,
I just
fair
don't
enough.
I don't think this belongs in core. It just, we don't even know that anyone wants it yet. And we have an 80% rule and we're we don't even have one use case for this.
Okay, fair enough. I will counterpose that and say we never asked people if they want to be tracked, and no one would want that to begin with. 80% of the people might not want to be tracked or send information. That's what I'm saying. I understand that the numbers might appear to be less and it will hurt the project. And normally you wouldn't expect someone from the community, and being such an avid member to say that, no, I still want this, but yeah.
That's another thought. I mean, we could just turn set this up, turn it off by default, not provide an option and say, nobody can report the data unless they deliberately install a module saying they do want to report the data. But then what we should also do is like remove project usage from backdropcms.org so that people don't use it thinking it's an actual measure of backdrop usage, right? And I think because we have this parallel between Drupal, there's like an assumption there without any understanding of the nuance, where people are like, I'm gonna look at Drupal's numbers and look at backdrop numbers and compare them like apples to apples. But I think that if we are gonna, and I think this is also something that I would be happy to, you know, have like a moral decision made about this by the PMC, like should we track people at all, I think is a good question. And if the answer is no, we can't do it without consent, then I do think we should, you know, implement that site-wide in a way that we do that, but then also remove project usage or reframe it in a way that people aren't going to be assuming that that's something they can use as a metrics for the health of the project.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that too.
yeah, it makes sense. Maybe we should park this issue then until we make a PMC decision. So probably take the time at some point.
Well, there's other stuff going on here too. Like, you know, if we want to enable the module for backdrop 121, or if we want like there's other things that we could still move forward on without this blocking progress. Like we could add the dashboard block, like there's other stuff too. So I think
This is not part of this ticket though.
Yeah.
31, yeah, it's part of the meta telemetry, which is the next thing that Nate was going to bring up.
okay.
So it should be, yeah, I agree, but it should be a separate issue. It's not a sub issue yet. It's there. We don't have a separate issue for it, but it's on the task, the first checkbox at the top.
Yeah, I'll repeat something Jen said earlier about this. Like if we ask them in the installer, do you want to enable telemetry? This is the only reason why I'm in favor of adding this option in the first place, or the primary reason is because if we have a way to disable usage information, it should be all usage information, not some of it. And so that's the only reason why I think that we need this option in the first place, is because if they haven't, if we're asking them the question in the installer, it should be absolute. It should cover all usage information and not just some of it. And so, yeah, I mean, we could sidestep these problems by like, you know, not asking any of these questions in the installer, like Gregory suggested. But then it comes down to like, is that ethical, you know, to do this?
We're still not going to be doing the completely ethical thing, which would be to have everything off by default. So what I'm suggesting is remove that from installer, have everything on by default, and allow people to opt out.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know that Jen is saying people are going to be afraid, but my experience is that some people are also going to be not bothered.
Yeah, and I think that allowing people to opt out is fine for telemetry, because it's really easy on-off module switch. But I do think we need to tell, like if we're going to enable by default, we need to do a better job of telling people it's on. Like we have it on the status report, but we could also have like a dashboard block that summarizes, I don't know, thank you message or whatever.
Yeah, we didn't get into that, but if you look at the status report, it's also listed here, telemetry enabled, and tells you a little bit more about it. It tells you to go to the report page.
Nice.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so let's kind of table that one for now. So the other things we've got here, telemetry follow-up issues. There's lots of telemetry follow-up issues about ways that we can improve this, and I'm not really sure what to say about this other than, you know, let's get at them. You know, almost all of these things can be done immediately, like in the bug fix release. So yeah, we've got lots of options here.
Most of them are really simple tasks. So if we were to say that the bug fix release was to come out soon, we could knock these out. It's just basically implementing the 2 hooks and that's it.
Yeah, and what these look like are really simple. Like Gregory, I mean, you've been following these pull requests, and they just look like, well, this one makes some things, but yeah, they add a line here saying, hey, I want to collect this information, and then it says what is the information that's being collected. So this is like a 6-line thing to add a new metric.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, the only thing that I want to point out, Nate, is what are we going to do with metrics that need to provide multiple things? Like, do we pass on arrays, JSON decoded? Like, for example, so currently the things that we are collecting is a single thing, like a PHP version, MySQL version. If I want to report back a list of modules, which I've tried on my local, do I pass on an array? Do I comma separated list? How?
Yeah, we don't have that ability right now. Right now it needs to be like either a single string or it needs to be a number, and numbers can be aggregated. But modules right now, the only thing that we would have like immediately available would be like each module might say like, we would need to say what's the list of modules we're interested in tracking, and then have a separate metric for each one of them.
For
Like,
each
is this
module,
module
yeah.
turned on or off? Is this module turned on or off, etc.
Would you, if we go down that path, would you prefer that each module provided its own hook instead of the system module? Because currently we put everything in the system module. Would you prefer it if it were on that individual module, and then if it was enabled with just sending information?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll need to discuss it more because, yeah, I mean, we could also change the way that stuff is aggregated on the server side to make it so that it could handle taking an array.
Arrays.
We just haven't gotten that far yet, really.
Yeah, the only module that comes to mind that we had this discussion about, whether it's going to be focused on that because how much people use it is what you call it, contact module.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, if we have specific ones, we can add them now and then collect the data that we get. And if we decide to change it later, we can simply stop accepting that data on the server side and just like remove it from the aggregated list. Sites will still be sending it if they haven't updated, but we just wouldn't care about it anymore.
Or display it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a long-standing old meta that says that lists multiple improvements for the content module. And one of the questions that pops up all the time is how much people do use it? Do they use it? Should we have it enabled by default? Things like that. So that's why.
And things like that, I think definitely should be, well, actually, is it enabled or not needs to be not in contact module, because if it's not turned on, it won't report it, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, but like, are people using individual contact forms or just the site-wide contact form? Could be a great entry that contact module itself should report.
But in the case of modules, it would make sense if the hooks were in the module, because if the module was not enabled, the stat would not be sent, right? Or do we still want to count the site, but not? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get it.
You need to have system module reporting whether
Yeah,
or
but
not
it's
another
disabled.
module was turned on or off, because otherwise 100% of sites would always have the module on if it was inside of the module itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Get you.
Okay. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and we only had one more things to discuss. So we have a Civic Crm server that's being set up thanks to Justin, but I think that we may need to table that for a later time because some of us have other obligations to attend to. So I think let's wrap it for today. Thank you everybody for being here and having the great discussions about telemetry and everything else. Oh, Tim, we wanted to talk about planning the next version. I think that's important to put that out there.
Well, it's not complicated either. I think you could just pick a date and that would be fine. Like, should we do that next week or 2 weeks or? Well, there is the survey question. That's a bigger question. But.
Yeah. So what I would like to see, if possible, is that we reopen the survey, or at least collect new questions for the survey, and if possible have those answers, like the survey, at least open for a week. Last meeting I said that we should have the discussion on October 7th. That's 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
But exactly what discussion that'll be, whether it's talking about questions that should be on the survey or talking about the results of the survey, or depends on how far the survey process is gone. So let's kind of plan a big 121 planning meeting for October 7th, but exactly the format and content of it will be to be determined.
Okay. Can we just mention too, Backdrop Live is in 4 weeks. That's all we
Also,
need
there's
to-
there's a CVCRM planning meeting tomorrow. Now the time is the same time as the first meeting, the UX and design meeting. What is it? At 1 p.m. is it?
Uh,
Depends on the time zone.
Pacific, 1 p.m. Pacific, yes.
1 p.m. Pacific?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I think so. It's on backdrop.org. No, it's not. Actually, it's not listed on backdrop.
It's on my calendar. That's why I
It's
see it.
on
It's
the-
next. It's the same time as the UX design meetings and the outreach meetings. So if it's
Okay.
1 p.m., that's
All right, well, we
Okay.
have to end. So thank you all for being here again, and we'll see you guys next week. And thank you out there on the internet.
Bye.
Bye.
see ya.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Skating.
Boom, boom, boom. Wait a second. Greg wanted me to stick around to talk to him, and now he's gone.
Oh,
Okay. Well, does anybody else want to talk to me? I've got nothing.
I don't really have much to say.
Okay. I'll just, Joseph in particular, Backdrop Lives in 4 weeks. Start thinking about what you want to talk about.
Yikes.
I didn't ask you if you wanted to talk about something. I'm just telling you to start thinking about what you want to talk about. That was a deliberate choice. I'll give you a week to come up with something, okay?
All right. Yeah, I don't know. Our life's probably going to be really hectic coming up soon.
Well, do you think you'll be able to participate?
I hope I will be able to participate.
Okay. Say, Luke, Greg said he wanted to talk to us, but then he bugged out after the meeting.
Maybe you forgot.
I think so. Okay, you think you'll be able to participate? Well, you know I'm joking about the pressure. You do what you need to do.
Right.
So. But also remember that you don't have to do a lot of preparation, right? Just it's
Right.
okay to just think of a topic and facilitate it. So.
Oh,
Okay.
we're still live.
Oh, we are.
We're still live on YouTube.
I can go. I apologize for that. I will go